I believe I am live on this Sunday, October 18th, 2020. Welcome to the 55th edition of our Con Salsa Facebook and YouTube Live, Saturday and Sundays from 4 to 6 p.m. I'm here from our studios, D&J Studios, D for Divina, J for yours truly, Jose, in the basement of our home in Boston. Divina's upstairs. I'm downstairs. I'll be here with you for at least two, maybe a little bit over 2 hours as we continue celebrating 45 years of Con Salsa, the very best in Afro-Latin music. You can tune in every Saturday night on WBUR, National Public Radio in Boston. And we are on from 10 p.m. until 3 o'clock in the morning. You can tune in via internet at www.wbur.org for those of you who are out of state. If you want to tune in for 5 hours of the very best in Afro-Latin music. But during the past 55 programs that we've been doing here, we've been doing it live with you every Saturday and Sunday from 4 p.m. until 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm sorry, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. 2 hours of music, and now many of the shows with invited guests. And today, my invited guest will be none other than our dear friend, Andrea Brachfeld. I met Andrea back in 1976 at a club in Lower Manhattan. She was performing with Charanga 76. At the time, they were very popular. And on the bill was Conjunto Libre and also Ralphy Santi and his Conjunto. She, of course, was playing the flute, and I interviewed her back then. And I still have the cassette of that interview with her and Ralphy Santi. On the other side of this cassette, by the way, is an interview with Dizzy Gillespie. And as I was writing my post late this afternoon that I shared with you with regards to today's program, I listened to this interview with Andrea, and it brought back many, many memories. But in any case, we'll have her joining us around 4:45, 4:50 or so. And, of course, we'll be sharing some music as well. One of my field producers, the one and only Ryan Newfall, says, "Happy Sunday, Jose. Another beautiful fall day. I hear you and see you, too." Thank you so much. Ann Hansen has joined us. The best. Thank you, Ann. And for all of those who are already watching, do me a favor. Share this with your friends and your neighbors so that way they can be part of this. So share the programming live, and they can watch us on Facebook or on YouTube live. They can subscribe to my station, Jose Masso, and they'll be able to enjoy the program live in its entirety. And you can also go back on that station, that channel, and get all of the shows that I've done that have been archived on YouTube with some of the guests that we've had during the past several months. Since we've been doing this in the month of March is when we began. Bueno, mi gente, saludos. Buenas tardes. Bienvenidos a otra edición del programa Con Salsa en vivo aquí en Facebook y YouTube. El número 55 de este tipo de programación. Llevo 45 años celebrando la programación en la radiodifusión pública de Boston, WBUR 90.9 FM, en el telefónico todos los sábados por la noche, pero desde el mes de marzo, cada fin de semana, sábado y domingo, estamos con ustedes en vivo de 4 a 6 en Facebook y YouTube, desde nuestro hogar aquí en el sótano, donde tenemos el estudio D y J, D para mi querida esposa divina, J para este servidor, José Mazo. Así que gracias por estar con nosotros. Hoy tenemos un programa en el cual estaremos escuchando música, pero también entrevista con nuestra invitada Andrea Brachfeld, que estará con nosotros un poquito más tarde, como a las 4:45, 4:50, algo por así. Jane Bunnett nos da el abrazo. Dice, looking forward to your interview with the wonderful Andrea. Jane Bunnett, our dear friend. Thank you so much, Jane, for being with us yesterday. It meant a lot for me, for you to be able to join us, and I am so happy that you did. And at the same time, you honored me by doing so. And thank you for tuning in for Andrea's interview as well and her music. So we're going to start with a little bit of music. This is not Andrea. We're going to hear Flaco Navaja. Flaco Navaja is a poet. He's a singer, actor. He does a number of different things as a cultural agent in New York City. And of course, gets the name Flaco Navaja from the song, the iconic song by Rubén Blades and Willie Colón, Pedro Navaja. And he has just recorded a single titled Cántale a la Vida. Has some interesting lyrics. I'd like you to listen to this. It's got a nice tune to it as well. Para empezar, no es Andrea Brachfeld, es Flaco Navaja con la selección Cántale a la Vida. Para comenzar el programa de hoy. Don't go away. Stay right there. I'll get some music for you, all right? Don't go.
Necesitamos amor, Necesitamos cariño, aunque sea de lejitos, pa' proteger los niñitos. Anoche soñé contigo, soñé que yo te abrazaba y que el tiempo nos sobraba, que no nos faltaba nada. Canta corazón, ay pulmón respira, abre tu balcón y cántala la vida. Canta corazón, ay pulmón respira, viste la esperanza y hazle una armonía. Necesitamos mirarnos, aunque sea por video. Hablémonos detenido. Pon tu mano en el vidrio. Canta corazón, ay pulmón respira, abre tu balcón y cántala la vida. Abre tu balcón y cántala la vida.
Abre tu balcón y cántale a la vida.
Oye, abre tu balcón y canta con alegría.
Y cántale a la vida.
A todos los trabajadores, esas son la gente mía.
Y cántale a la vida.
Las caras lindas de mi gente negra. Black Lives Matter. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Abre tu
From the South Bronx to the Hollywood Hills, from Santo Domingo hasta la Ciudad de México, a través de todas las fronteras, desde tu casa a la mía, un abrazo social. From a distance, we don't have to be in the same room to be unidos en un sentido común. Together, we raise our voices and our fists for justice. Unidos, we change the world.
y sigue la salsa con Salsa y José Mazo. Y sigue la salsa con Salsa y José Mazo. Y sigue la salsa con Salsa y José Mazo.
Ajá. La pregunta Alejandro Lecaro, nuestro amigo, pregunta por favor esa canción cuál es y el artista me gusta para comenzar el día de labores. Flaco Navaja es su nombre, no es un nombre de pila, pero es un nombre como artista. La canción Cántale a la Vida acaba de salir, salió el viernes si no me equivoco, y ya la pueden adquirir por medio de plataformas digitales. Flaco Navaja es actor, es poeta, es activista social en la ciudad de Nueva York. Y obviamente su nombre que usa para sus actuaciones artísticas viene de la canción Pedro Navaja, Flaco Navaja. Así que ahí lo tienen para comenzar el show de hoy, Cántale a la Vida. So we start off the show with a song that I thought would be apropos as we have 16 days before elections here in the United States on November 3rd. A beautiful fall day. Our cousin Victor Rivera missing the fall. He used to live in New York. Now he and his wife are living in Florida. He was making mention of my fall colors today. Divina and I woke up early, had brunch, and she said, how are you going to do the show today? I said, I'm going to do it live. And she said, no. How are you going to dress? I said, I don't know. She said, stay the way you are. You are just like fall. And I said, I will do that just for you. So, Divina, I love you. And here, your cousin Victor is appreciating your choice for today, okay? So we're going to have some great music, some great conversation. Please let me know where you're listening from. I've gotten already some folks from Hershey, Pennsylvania, Alexis Alfonso, and we've got David Cantrell on board from Old Pueblo. Good to see you, David. And also, I've got some other people tuning in from different places. Alejandro, who's in Guayaquil, Ecuador. And we have people in France. We have people, of course, in Aruba, nuestro amigo Carlos Bislap. So we have a number of people who are tuning in as we do the program today. And I'm looking forward to, as I said before, your company. Share this with others so they can be part of today's program. Here we go. Listen to this.
Cadenas ni rejas, soy azúcar y soy sal. Si me quieres o me dejas, me da igual. Soy un poco vagabundo, lo mismo vengo que voy. Viajo solo por el mundo y feliz estoy. Amo el sol que se levanta, la fragancia de una flor. Y me gusta como canta el ruiseñor. Que siempre deprisa no anuncia su partida. Y como el dinero soy, donde yo quiero voy, sin una despedida. Soy el agua de los ríos que corriendo siempre está. Todo lo que tengo es mío y de los demás. Soy un gallo en la mañana, un gato al anochecer. Me he comido la manzana del placer. Soy un mendigo ante el diablo y millonario ante Dios. Hablo poco cuando hablo, sin alzar la voz. Soy además mentiroso, soy vanidoso y buen actor. Quisiera ser dichoso en el amor. Soy como la brisa que siempre deprisa no anuncia su partida. Y como el dinero soy, donde yo quiero voy, sin una despedida. Sin una despedida. Anuncia su partida.
Como me miras te miro, como me tratas te trato. Tú no te metas conmigo porque aquí yo soy el guapo.
Guapo, yo sí soy el guapo. Guapo, yo sí soy el guapo.
A mí me dicen el guapo y no es que sepa pelear, es porque yo me protejo de la gente que hace mal.
Guapo, yo sí soy el guapo. Guapo, yo sí soy el guapo.
Tú dices que no me quieres, yo digo bravo, qué bueno. Con personas como tú, las cosas se van al suelo.
El guapo soy yo.
¿Qué hacer eco?
El guapo soy yo.
Porque yo sé guarachar.
El guapo soy yo.
Escucha mi guapería,
El guapo soy
con
yo.
dulzura y melodía.
El guapo soy yo.
Como me miras te miro,
El guapo soy yo.
como me tratas te trato.
El guapo soy yo.
No te metas conmigo,
El guapo
porque
soy yo.
aquí yo soy el guapo.
El guapo soy
Yo no
yo.
soy un terrorista,
El guapo soy
ni
yo.
tampoco un criminal.
El guapo soy
Y
yo.
que cuando yo me meto,
El guapo
la
soy
tierra
yo.
empieza a temblar.
El guapo soy yo.
Ahora sí, mami, ven ahora que te voy a enseñar mi guapería. Ajá.
Que si viene a tirar, que si te eche, olvídate de eso. Esto es lo mío. Hachero.
El guapo soy yo. 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 El guapo soy
Te
yo.
tumbó el confo el karate,
El guapo soy
te
yo.
cortó esa porquería.
El guapo soy
Yo
yo.
también traigo mi
guapo
ayer,
soy yo.
también mi canto
El guapo
abacúa.
soy
Y
yo.
pa' los guerreros buenos,
El guapo
que
soy
los
yo.
cuidió batalá.
El guapo soy yo.
Zamberí,
El guapo soy yo.
Una más puedes hacerlo, mujercita, una más puedes crecer si quieres. Una más puedes hacerlo, mujercita, una más puedes crecer si quieres. Y es tiempo ya, no te demores más. Eso lo digo pa' que te enteres y pa' que sepas bien quién tú eres. Pues ya no pierdas tiempo en cosas negativas, sigue adelante y vive la vida. Y en la vida tú debes estar y que tu hombre lo haga igual. zorzal, una más, todo color de esmeralda, una más, allá por el mar igual, una más.
Bueno, mi gente, ahí escuchamos algunas de las clásicas con la participación de Andrea Brachfeld, nuestra invitada para la tarde de hoy. Primero comenzamos con el disco clásico Charanga 76. Andrea Brachfeld en la flauta, Ronnie Barro, vocales, Joe Boyne en los timbales, Gilberto Colón, el pulpo en el piano, Danny González congas, Danny González congas, Hansel Martínez en las vocales, Felipe Martínez en el güiro, con el bajo de Julio Romero y Enrique Orengo en el cello, Joe Sherman en el violín. Una producción de Mike García y Eddie Drennan, Charanga 76. Cuando yo conocí, como dije antes, a nuestra amiga Andrea Brachfeld, se cayó algo ahí. Andrea Brachfeld fue en el 76, el otoño del 76. Ya ella estaba integrada en el grupo y yo estuve en Nueva York para una semana o algo así por el estilo y pasé por un club en el Bajo Manhattan. Se encontraba la Charanga 76, Ralphy Santi y su conjunto, no sé si se recuerdan de él. También el Conjunto Libre de Manny Oquendo. Y esa noche, pude conversar con ambos, con Ralphy Santi y con Andrea Brachfeld. Así que la conozco desde 1976. Luego ella graba un disco como solista. Y es un disco interesante. Mire, este disco que se lo voy a enseñar aquí. Ese disco que se titula Andrea es interesante porque la producción fue hecha, o sea, el productor ejecutivo fue nada más y nada menos que Vicente Barrero, quien es el dueño, el propietario, él y su señora, de la Casa Latina, una casa disquera donde se compran discos en la 116 en Nueva York, en el barrio latino, Spanish Harlem. Él fue el que produjo ese disco con la participación de José Madera, que fue el productor del disco, o sea, el productor ejecutivo que puso la plata fue Vicente y el productor del disco fue nuestro amigo José Madera, el gran arreglista y percusionista, hijo de Pin Madera. Escuchamos El Guapo, canción escrita por Alberto Santiago, a petición y recomendación de nuestro amigo, el maestro mío, el gran Johnny Giraldo, había pedido esa selección musical y yo estaba de acuerdo con él 100%, así ahí la escucharon. Tremenda canción escrita por Adalberto Santiago, sí, él mismo. Y escuchamos también Tú Nada Más, canción de John Andrews. John Andrews es el timbalero que tocó con Willie Colón, con Rubén Blades, con Mongo Santa María, con un sinnúmero de agrupaciones. Él fue el que compuso esa selección. En este grupo, Andrea Brachfeld en la flauta, los violines de Eddie Drennan, Carl Hector, Luis Kahn, el fenecido Luis Kahn. En el cello, Enrique Orengo, trompeta, Pat Rousseau, en el trombón, Barry Rogers, Mike Ríos en el piano. En el lado A participó en el bajo Joe Santiago, en el lado B, Bobby Rodríguez. Qué trabuco, ¿eh? Y timbales y percusión, John Andrews, conga y percusión, Luis Bauzó, bongo, Ángel Cachete Maldonado. Y el güiro Mike Martínez, en la batería Paul Kimbrell, vocales Raymond Pérez y Gregory Sánchez en el coro, Frankie Figueroa, Víctor Velázquez y Vicente Consegrau. Y las liner notes son escritas por Karen Joseph, quien fue mi invitada hace unas semanas atrás con Andy Harlow, quien fue la que reemplazó a nuestra amiga Andrea Brachfeld en Charanga 76. Así que ahí está la historia sobre eso. Bien, por aquí comentarios. We've got some comments after having heard some good music there. Johnny gives applause. Gracias, Johnny. Salsa Caliche dice, yo tenía 13 años, me gustaba cuando escuché la primera vez la Charanga 76. ¿Viste? También dice Johnny, muy buena producción y muy buena gente, el señor Vicente. Sí, señor. Cada vez que estoy en Nueva York, paso por allá y soy bien, bien fiel cliente para él. Y por aquí Víctor Rivera ya dice, yes, la Casa Latina, se recuerda la Casa Latina allá en el barrio. Bueno, mi gente, vamos a continuar. En este caso, en algún lugar se cayó el disco, pero vamos a continuar escuchando música. Let's continue hearing a little bit more of Andrea Brachfeld. This is from an album that brought her back, at least for many of us. We had missed her. She had been away. And it's called Son Charanga, Back in with Sweet Passion. You're going to enjoy this. Y saludos para Soledad Salazar, que está en sintonía, gozando de la programación de hoy.
Ayude a prevenir el COVID-19 con distanciamiento social. Use el teléfono, FaceTime o mensajes en línea para comunicarse con sus amigos y familiares. Quédese en su casa el mayor tiempo posible. No se reúna en grupos. Manténgase a una distancia de 6 pies o 2 metros de las demás personas. Evite estrechar las manos o dar abrazos. Y por favor, continúe lavándose las manos con frecuencia. Visite mass.gov/COVID-19 o llame al 211. Un mensaje del Departamento de Salud Pública de Massachusetts.
Siempre en su casa presente está el bodeguero y el cha-cha-cha. Vete a la esquina y lo verás, que atento siempre te servirá. Anda enseguida, córrete allá, que con la plata lo encontrarás del otro lado del mostrador, muy complaciente y servidor. Bodeguero, ¿qué sucede? ¿Por qué tan contento estás? Yo creo que es consecuencia de lo que en moda está. El bodeguero bailando está. En la bodega se baila así, entre frijoles, papa y ají. El nuevo ritmo del cha-cha-cha.
siente sabroso, bailando este rico mambo. Usted se siente sabroso, con este ritmo meloso. Recordamos a Fajardo, ritmo de pollo, pollo, que es lo que tiene la orquesta. Ritmo de pollo, pollito, como decía Fajardo. Ritmo de pollo, pollo, que es lo que tiene la orquesta. A mí que, decía Juana Tripita, la negra más rutinera. A mí que, yo soy Tripita en La Habana, mi negro aquí donde sea. Si viera cómo meneaba Tripita su cinturita, detrás que con su palucha solita se divertía y decía se acabó. A mí que, esposa Miriam,
a mí que,
con su flauta maravillosa y su tremendo tumbao, Saoco,
a mí que,
el bodeguero y Pinocho,
a mí que,
decía Juana Tripita cuando Fajardo la puso a gozar en La Habana.
a mí que,
Oye,
a mí que,
Alfredo, Jerry Chembo, Oscar y Willy y Andrea te rinden tributo.
a mí que,
Mr. Charanga,
a mí que,
a ti te decían.
Baba o batalao fie demu la mi bacheo. Baba wole wolembo. O chikambo kalambo wajuna o kalambo. E chilala baba solala o. Tani kicheo batalao fie demu la mi bacheo. Baba. Babao, bala, feye, simoro. Bala, dide, dide. Bala, eko, kini bala, mawo. Bala, eko, kini bala. Baba, kini bala, mawo. Bala, eko, kini bala. Ochakinya, kini bala, mawo. Bala, eko, ayakuna, kini bala, mawo.
Was that beautiful or what? I love that one. African Flower. That was a composition by Duke Ellington. Comes off this album, in case you don't have it on your record collection. Include this one, Chembo Corniel and Andrea Brachfeld. It's titled Beyond Standards, featuring Hilton Reese, Steve Turre, and Pedrito Martinez, just to name a few of the folks on this particular recording. And of course, you heard Pedrito on vocals. Wilson Chembo Corniel, who we will have as a guest pretty soon here on the show as well, was on the congas, bata, concolo, bongo, and percussion. Hilton Reese played piano on that particular cut there. Steve Turre participates in the album. Carlos De Rosa on bass. Chris Edlton on drums. And Vince Chirico also participates on drums. On violins, on one of the cuts is Sam Bardfield. And as you heard, Pedrito Martinez singing on that one and on another one. And Lisa Maria Saab also sings on that one. And on the bata, you heard Chris Thurberg and David Gomez. David doing the Iya. It totally was Chris. 2006. Andrea Brachfeld with our dear friend Chembo Cornier. And before that, Johnny want to know when it was released. Did I just say when it was released? It was released in 2006, Johnny. Before that, you heard that medley that I hope you enjoyed of Jose Fajardo's classics, at least three. And the liner notes state the following, that when Andrea was about to record the album, Back with Sweet Passion, she consulted with Fajardo's wife, Miriam, and chose three of Fajardo's favorite places to include in her tribute: El Bodeguero, Ritmo de Pollo, y A Mi Que. That's what you heard there. Some great music. Our dear friend Ernest Chico Alvarez participating in that as well. Oscar Hernandez on piano, Chico Alvarez on vocals. And before I bring our dear guest on, desde Italia, ciao, good to see you, my dear friend. I'm glad you're here with us. I bring attention to all of us. Since I've started this program, I told you, well, I've not told you, I've shared with you that the idea for the program came from my son, and I've gotten a lot of instruction from my mentor, Johnny Giraldo, as to how to use this technology. I'm from the 20th century. I've told you I've already reached the 7th floor in life, the 7th, I'm at 70 years old, so this is all new to me. But nevertheless, part of doing this, in addition to doing the radio show every Saturday night, is to try to create community and do so using technology. I mean, we may be physically distant from each other, but at least through technology, we can get closer. Like the song that I shared in the beginning of the program by Flaco Navaja. You can communicate through technology in a way that it's not just a waste of time, but really meaningful. And what we try to do here in Salsa is try to create a community every Saturday and Sunday and support each other. And so the fact that our dear friends in the West Coast, Ceci and Johnny, shared the fact that they made it to the show, but their heart is somewhat heavy because their aunt is diagnosed with COVID, living in New Jersey. Although she's stable, she's being closely monitored at the hospital, and asking for our prayers, and trust us that our prayers and all of our positive energy are going your way and towards your aunt's recovery. That being said, all of us, of course, continue to try to do the best that we can by being actively vigilant about physical distance, washing our hands, and using a mask. Please, that's what I ask. And with that note, I also want to welcome all the other folks who have just joined in. David Romero in Las Vegas checking in. You're coming through nice and clear. Thank you, David. Appreciate that. And all the other folks who are tuning in, gracias a cada uno de ustedes que están con nosotros. Nuestra amiga Soledad Salazar, divina, te envía saludos. Así que ya sabe, tiene una amiga divina que está en sintonía contigo. ¿Ok? So why don't we bring our guests? I mentioned to you that back in '76 is when I met her. She was playing with Charanga '76. That was what, 44 years ago, right? 44 years ago. My God, 44 years. How time has flown. Mighty Red says hello. Thank you, Mighty Red. And our dear friend Andrea is laughing as I say that because I'm going to welcome her now. And there she is.
Oh, my hair's all weird.
That's okay. That's okay. And so you were laughing because it was 45 years ago? Was that 44 years ago? Is that what you were laughing?
Yeah, that's right. Oh, see, I can't figure out which side. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, everything is opposite, so it's really it's hard to figure all this stuff out.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, thank you for joining us and welcome. I've told my guests yesterday we had Jane Bunnett on, your dear friend Jane, who's in Canada right now watching the show. And I told her, as I'm telling you, I don't have one of those machines that other people use when they have a guest come on that applause and does all that kind of stuff. I don't have those gimmicks, but I asked the audience to give you a round of applause. So you are receiving a round of applause, okay? You're receiving a round of applause.
I don't need a round of applause. I'm okay.
Good. And our dear friend Mary Kent says you're looking great. So Mary gives
thank you, Mary.
all right. So welcome, and it's so good to see you. I know you had a gig today, so you had a little bit of pressure getting here. You were like, I got a gig, but I got to go do this thing with Jose. But everything worked out.
Yeah, I know.
Everything worked out.
I was just like zooming.
So
And I wasn't zooming on Zoom. I was
got
zooming
you.
in my car.
So where was the gig, and who were you performing with?
The gig was in Brooklyn, which I just moved to Bayonne, so it wasn't that far. And Willie Martinez had called me to do this gig. Renato Toms was on it, and Melissa Slocum, and Steve Sandberg.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay.
So it's on Facebook, on Willie's page, if you want to check it out.
And it was live in person, which is great news for any musician at this moment in time under the conditions that we're living. Speaking about conditions and musicians, this musician says, hello, my dear friend of 40 years, Ralphy Santi.
Ralphie. Brother from another mother. Hey, Ralphie.
Yeah, there he is, the great Ralphy Santi. Ralphie, saludo, que Dios te bendiga. And so I'd like to do a little bit of Sankofa. I'd like to go back so we can know where we are today and think about the future. But as we go back, I'd like to start off with 1976. You're playing with Charanga 76. Tell us, even before we dive into you, how you got into music and all those kinds of good things. So this would have been a few years after you performed with Charanga 76. This was the scene. This is a club called Ochentas. During the first anniversary, right? You had dances Wednesday, Friday. You had Sunday dances. You had 3 bands. You had 2 bands. You had Oscar. On a Saturday, they had Oscar de Leon Orquesta and Broadway Ralphy Santi. That Eddie Palmieri Conjunto Clásico Charanga América. That Tito Puente with Machito and Santitos Colón. They had a Gran Combo Orquesta Broadway. Sonora Ponceña, Orquesta Broadway, Luis Perico Ortiz. In other words, that used to be the scene back then. When I met you, you were performing Charanga 76. Conjunto Libre was performing, and Ralphy Santi and his Conjunto were performing as well. There was 3 bands performing at that time. So share with us, what was that like at that moment in time in 1976, you playing with Charanga 76 and the Latin music scene in New York City?
Well, I mean, Ralphie knows, and everybody else who was there, Chembo, it was just, there was so much music going on. There was so much work. I mean, typically, Charanga 76, we had a gig. We had like 9 gigs a week. We had 3 gigs on Friday, 2 gigs on Saturday, 2 gigs on Sunday. How much is that? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then a couple gigs during the week. And I mean, it was great because, I was on my own and I needed to pay my rent and eat. So, it was a great time musically. Everybody got to hear everybody else play because we would like go to a club and play one set, pack up and then go to another club. So it was just a fabulous time for sure,
And when you say you used to get to hear other people perform, what was that like for you as a flute player who had just, although you had been playing for a couple of years by then with other Charanga bands, but to be able to at least catch a little bit of whomever was playing flute with Conjunto Libre, for instance, or whoever was playing flute with whomever else. What was that like?
Oh, it was great. But I play with Conjunto Libre too.
I heard, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, it was just community, that
Hmm.
it was fabulous because it was like this real family. Everybody knew each other and, checked everybody out and listened to each other and supported each other. So it was just a really good time. Absolutely.
Well, that's why many people consider that the golden era, at least that part of the golden era, because if you talk to the old timers, they'll say it was a palladium, and depending on the era, but that was a great era, as you have such
Oh
stated.
yeah.
So you know, you are somebody that started playing music very young. So let's go back there. When you were, how old was it? 7 years old, something like that? Six, seven
I
years old?
started playing piano when I was 6.
6 years old. And why
Yeah.
was that? Why were you starting at that young age?
Well, in my household, we had different choices. Do you want to go to do you want to take piano lessons? Do you want to take dance lessons? Do you want to go to take Hebrew lessons? We had choices, and I wanted to play the piano. So let's see, who was my first teacher? Mr. Janowski, I think, and then Mr. Nasser. And they both said the same thing. They said, they told my mom, she's got a lot of rhythm. She's going to be able to play jazz, and I didn't know what jazz was except for, the music in the cartoons, in the black and white cartoons.
Yeah, yeah, that little music. Yeah.
Armstrong and Cap Calloway and all
Hmm.
those great guys. So that,
Hmm.
that that was my first exposure to jazz.
And then you played piano. And when did you switch from piano to the flute?
Well, it wasn't really a switch; it was an addition to. And I
Okay.
started playing flute when I was 10, in the 4th grade. The music teacher was like, "Oh, do you want to play the flute?" And I'm like, "Okay." I mean, you're 10. What do you know? You just say, "Okay." Do I get to get out of class? Okay. You know.
Anything, yeah, I'll do that. Yes, okay.
Yeah.
But then the flute became a little bit much more of interest of your passion as you got older. You won a scholarship. What was that scholarship all about?
You mean the from
Or was it?
Jazz Interactions?
Yes, that. What was it?
Oh yeah. When I was coming up, there weren't like jazz programs in universities. There was Jazzmobile in Harlem on Saturday mornings, and then there was Jazz Interactions on Thursday afternoon. And Billy Taylor created the
Hmm.
Jazzmobile, and Joe Newman and Rigmore Newman created Jazz Interactions. So, I just took advantage of those two opportunities. And Yusuf Latif was one of my teachers. Barry
Hmm.
Harris was one of my teachers. And then, so, at the end of the year, we're all like in this auditorium and they're calling out names, and they called out my name, and I didn't even like hear it. And somebody next to me said, "They called out your name." And I'm like, "For what? What did I do?" And they said, "You got a scholarship." I'm like, "What did I do?" I really didn't. It was totally unexpected. So it was great. I mean, it was, if I had wanted to go to Berklee School of Music, it would have been a scholarship for $1,000. And back in those days,
Hmm.
that was good.
Hmm.
But I called Berklee School of Music and I was like, "So do you have a flute teacher on staff?" And they're like, "No." And I thought, I do want to play jazz, but I think I need to learn how to play the flute first. So the scholarship was like $500 if you went someplace else. So I went to Manhattan School of Music.
Good choice. But at high school, you had some interesting classmates, I must say. When I was looking through your bio, there were
Yeah.
some names I was like, okay, excuse me. Share some of
Yeah.
those with our audience, some of the folks that you studied with.
Yeah, that I studied with.
Well, no, that were part of your,
Were-
your group of students. Yeah.
Yeah, Dave Valentine was going to school at Music and Art at that time, and Noel Pointer and Earl McIntyre, Nat Adderley Jr. I don't remember who else. Yeah,
You had a few. You had a few. As we continue, let me at least let you know. Laura gives you applause, welcoming you.
Oh,
Jenny
thank
Giraldo
you,
gives you
Larry.
applause, welcoming you.
Yes, yes.
David Ramiro gives you applause. David in Las Vegas. Maribel, applause. Victor Rivera gives you peace and applause. And we have Ceci and Johnny in California. And our dear friend Ralphie recited once again, who had said hello, my dear friend of 4 years. One of the comments he made was there was also traveling. No such thing of singers traveling without a band.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And as a matter of fact, Ralphie and I did a tour. He was playing with Charanga Sensual, right, Ralphie? I always forget that. And I was playing with Charanga America, and we went to Venezuela, and we were doing a tour with Orquesta Aragon
Mm.
in Caracas. It was kind of a weird tour, but it was a tour nonetheless. And we all got to hang out. That was the first time that I met Richard Egues. So it was fabulous.
And as you were listening to this, some of the medleys we played, of course, were your Charanga days. How was it that you became a member of Charanga 76? I know the story, but share it with our dear friends who are watching.
So okay, so I was living in the East Village, and I went to the Tin Palace, which was on the Bowery and 5th Street, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And Lloyd McNeil was performing there. I had met him someplace, I don't know. And he asked me to sit in, and Mauricio Smith was in the audience. And Mauricio came up to me afterwards, and he said, "Are you working?" And I said, "Not enough." He said, "Well, I'm going to turn you on to charanga music. Do you want to play it?" And I'm like, "Sure." So he turned me on to this band that Mike Perez had, Típica New York. And Philip Martinez People, the leader of Charanga 76, was playing Guido in the band.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I kind of learned on the bandstand, because I didn't really know how to play charanga music. And then people asked me if I wanted to record with a new band. At that time, no was not in my vocabulary. Everything was sure. Yes, of course. Why not? Yeah.
It worked. It was work. Yes, I'll do that. Why not? Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I did. And I guess everybody knows Charanga 76 became super famous, and, they really took advantage of, the woman flute player. And I was just like, I got to pay my rent, I got to eat. So I'm really glad I have this opportunity. So it was kind of like that, And, a lot of people ask me, well, what was it like to play with men? What is it like to play with men? I'm like, I just have to pay my rent, and I have to eat. And, a man is a man, a woman is a woman, but a gig is very important, so I just focused on doing that,
So
somebody went into that whole, well, you're a woman thing. I'm like, yes, I am,
But in other words, you were like pragmatic. This is a gig. This is what I'm doing to survive. Thank you very much. And it happens to be a charanga band. Okay. I got that. So here's some saludos for you. Angelina Quiroga, our dear friend from Lima. Buenas tardes desde Lima.
Angelina, how you doing?
Saludos para la maestra Andrea Brachfeld.
Yeah, we did an interview when I was in Peru a couple of years ago.
And then aquí tiene un repertorio muy amplio fuera de la salsa, muchas artistas musicales en sus carreras. Eso es cierto, de eso vamos a hablar. Ralph, was I with Típica New York when you played? that's
I
Ralph
don't
asking.
know, Ralphie, were you? I don't know. I don't remember. Maybe.
And so I'm intrigued when you say you learn on the bandstand, because basically it was learning by doing, right? It was every day was a class. You were like, okay, hit it, play, and then you were playing and learning real-time education.
Yeah.
Did you spend any time listening to records, listening to
yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
course,
who would have been that school of music that you were listening to?
Well, the Cats, Aracaño, Belisario Lopez, Richard Egues, The cats.
The cats. You were listening to the cats. And what was it? How was it that you were able to then finally say, "Okay, I've got this now. I know what it is, and I've got the style that I need"? Or was it always, I'm learning every single time I'm playing. I'm just hoping
I'm
that
still learning.
it was one of those. I'm learning. Trust me, I'm still learning.
No. The day that you say I got this, you got to hang it up.
That's
Yeah.
you never get that. You never get
No,
that.
no. You're always, life is a process. It's not a product.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think of life as a product, well, when I get there, nothing is everything is in movement.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's how I am anyway. I always feel like I have so much to learn.
So there was a moment in time when you don't disappear, but you leave from New York and you go to Venezuela after a number of years of working the New York scene. And from what I understood, that was supposed to be like a short-term gig, but it turned out to be a rather long-term gig. Was that the case?
Yeah. I thought it was going to be a month. I mean, I told the guy, I'll stay there a month. And then when I got there, he's like, "Oh, why don't you sign a contract?" And I'm like, "I guess, but if I don't like it, I'm leaving, And so I ended up playing with La Imensa for a year with Renato Capriles.
Mm-hmm.
And then, while I was there were a couple of jazz clubs there. So I used to go down there and sit in and everything. And then eventually got a gig there, playing 6 nights a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started doing recording TV and radio commercials. So, and then I met my first husband there.
Uh-huh.
And then it felt, I had been there for almost 2.5 years. My last gig, I opened for Chick Corea with my Latin jazz band, my first Latin jazz band. And I was pregnant. I was 5 months pregnant. But it felt uncomfortable to stay there. And I told my husband, "I'm leaving. You want to come with me? Cool. Cool. I'm leaving." And then from the time I left in November of 82 till he came in January of 83, the economy totally collapsed.
In Venezuela. Mm-hmm.
So I had a feeling something was going to happen,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As we segue to the next bit of information, Ralph is going through his memory back. He says, "I think I was. Típica New York had great flute players, Nestor Torres and Gonzalo Fernandez." Yes, the great Don Gonzalo Fernandez was somebody that was very, very active during that period
Típica
of
New
time.
York or Típica 73? I think it was Típica 70 because Gonzalo Fernandez played with Típica 73. But I could be wrong. I don't remember. And Nestor Torres, I know Nestor played with Charanga America. He played with Típica Dial. I mean, all of the flute players played with everybody. We called each other for gigs and.
So you spoke about your Latin jazz, and we're going to sort of like jump for a moment because there's this one album in your many albums that this one here, Lady of the Island. And I bring this album to everybody's attention. El disco que acaban de ver se titula Lady of the Island. Y la razón por la cual, the reason why I bring this album is
Bueno,
because...
se puede seguir hablando español.
Claro, vamos a hacerlo. Mira, la razón por la cual traigo a la atención de los que están viendo el show es los músicos que participan en esta grabación. No solamente tiene a Chembo y tiene a Bob 40 y también, pero tiene a Bill O'Connell, Wycliffe Gordon y también Wallace Roney. Vamos a hablar un poco sobre la combinación tuya con Wallace Roney y obviamente el hecho de que lamentablemente debido a COVID-19 ya no tenemos a Wallace Roney con nosotros. Así que eso es un lamento que es parte de la tragedia de COVID-19. Pero ¿cómo es ese junte de tú y Wallace Roney? ¿Cómo es eso?
You want me to answer in English or Spanish?
Whatever you feel comfortable. Whatever comes out, your mind says, go.
Well, you know, I want everybody to understand.
Okay.
So I was going to a club, Cecil's Jazz Club in New Jersey, with a friend of mine, and just because we wanted to hear some jazz, and we walked in, and there weren't a lot of seats, and there were some musicians sitting at the bar, and so the owner asked the musicians if they would get up so we could sit down, you know. So we sat down, and Arwan Ortiz was playing piano with Wallace. Wallace was playing at Cecil's. And I noticed that he had an accent, so we started talking, and he was from Cuba. So, you know, we kind of exchanged numbers and blah, blah, blah. So not too long after that, he called me up, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I just got out of teaching." And he said, "Go home, get your flute, and come to this address." And I was like, "Why?" He said, "Just do it." I said, "Okay, no problem." And so when I got there, it was at the Samurai recording studio in Brooklyn. And Wallace was there with a couple of people, and Wayne Shorter's scores that he had written for Miles Davis to perform before they had broken up. The band broke up, and they wanted a couple of flute players. So there was me and somebody else, and we started playing, you know, this music. And so, you know, I started, we started having rehearsals, and, you know, it was for 7 or 8 years, probably about 9 years, you know, Wallace and I were colleagues, and I was part of this project called the Universe. And the music was just fabulous. We did record it with Lenny White on the drums, and Buster Williams on the bass, and Oscar Williams and Victor Gould on piano. Just amazing musicians. Just, you know, it was like a 25-piece group. And so, you know, in between all that, you know, I was thinking, well, maybe I should just, you know, ask Wallace if he wants to do the recording. And he said, yeah. So I said, okay, come on. You know? I mean, it's just the way it is, you know, you just want to be friendly to people and get to know people, and, you know, expand your musical family, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Jane Bunnett has a question for you. Hey, Andrea, who was the other flute player in the session? So
the session. Oh,
the one that you were just talking about, the one with.
Well, it wasn't really a session. We were just reading music, but the person who ended up playing was Karen Satchel. You know, because it was flute. She was on alto flute. And then Norbert was playing, her husband was playing bass clarinet, and we had English horn and French horn and trombones and trumpets and saxophone. And I mean, it was just, you know, I can't wait till that recording comes out, because it's music that's just out of this world. I mean, Wayne Shorter is just an amazing.
That's Wayne Shorter. But Wallace, you know, those who don't know, Wallace Roney, great jazz trumpet player, period, not just jazz, great trumpet player. Many folks who followed Wallace, of course, thought of him as being the continuation of all those great trumpet players, and specifically of Miles Davis. And he was one of the early, at least, names of people that were known who passed because of COVID-19, which shocked all of us when we heard of his passing. I mean, we were just like blown away because, you know, you suddenly say, what? Wallace Roney, you know, and I'm sure for you it must have been something similar to that.
Yeah, I mean, he was Miles's protege, you know, so he, and I was very, very fortunate to have a very deep friendship with Wallace. You know, we were really good friends, and we spoke at length about spirituality and music and many, many other things. I was just very honored that we were friends. And what I ended up doing with his band was what Lenny used to say. I was the straw horse. I was like, well, what's that, Lenny? And the straw horse is, I would gather the music and I would make phone calls. I was just like really helping Wallace out. So, and I still have a bunch of his music. I don't mind saying it publicly because I'll give it back if you want it.
No, but that must have been a great experience. But on this album, we're going to hear one cut. I think we're going to hear, what is it? Eye of the Hurricane is the one.
Oh yeah, a Herbie tune. Yeah.
So that's Herbie Hancock. And this album is not just standards. So talk a little bit about the album. I'm sorry, not standards. Lady of the Island. Talk about the album.
Well, I find that every project that I do really reflects my musical growth at the moment, at that particular moment in time. And I was listening to a lot of Herbie, and I was listening to a lot of Wayne Shorter.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I wanted to record music that was, that I liked. I mean, it's pretty simple, I liked it. And it was the beginning of the transition from Bob Quaranta, who was my pianist for many years, who's great. I love him. But I started hearing other things, and Bill O'Connell was playing things that I heard, So Bill and I started our collaboration. And I think this was the first time that he played on my records, I think, and he did a bunch of arrangements.
Mm-hmm.
We had some original material. I always wanted to record Lady of the Island, Crosby, Stills and Nash. I just love that tune.
Mm-hmm.
So we recorded that. So, I guess there's a lot of reasons why people choose different songs to record. And then, you really want to have some kind of flow to the music, so it kind of tells a cohesive musical story, I mean, if it's just haphazard and all different kinds of styles and everything, it's kind of, to me anyway, it's too frenetic, it makes me crazy, so I figure if it makes me crazy, it's going to make other people crazy.
So let's hear a little bit of Eye of the Hurricane. Herbie Hancock composed it. Here's Andrea with Wallace Roney. That, ladies and gentlemen, the late Wallace Roney. Wyclef Gordon was on trombone, arranged by Bill O'Connell, who's on piano.
Yeah.
Shembo O'Neill, of course, on percussion. And on drums, Kim Plainfield. Bass, Andy Elau.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, when I interviewed you, I was listening to a cassette here. And in the interview, en la entrevista que le hice a Andrea en el año 1976, una pregunta que le hice a Andrea era sobre qué tipo de música quería tocar, qué género, si era Latin jazz, si era charanga, si era salsa. Ella me dice, música. Y yo, sí, pero ¿qué tipo de música? Ella dice, música. Le pregunté la tercera vez, sí, pero ¿cuál más? Música. ¿No me entiendes? Música. Yo lo que toco es música. Lo que quiero tocar es música. No me digas si es salsa, si es jazz, es música. y al escucharla ahora, yo digo, oye, la verdad es que la pregunta tiene sentido, pero también la respuesta tiene más sentido todavía. Porque yo lo que quiero Ella dice, mira, yo lo que quiero tocar es música, no empieza a hablar a mí si quiero tocar.
No, porque no hay diferencia. La música buena, como dijo Duke Ellington, la música buena. No tiene categoría ni nada.
Así que es música, así que me encantó. Yo lo escuché aquí mismo y yo mismo me reía y decía, bueno, la verdad que bueno, y la razón por la cual digo eso, porque cuando yo oigo esa música, por ejemplo, cuando yo oigo ese disco, cuando oigo con Wallace Roney, o sea, es música de la mejor, todo es buenísima, no es de calidad, no es calidad. Desde el principio, cuando empezamos con tu disco de charanga, con el principio, con la charanga 76, con todo lo que tú haces, es calidad. Y hablando de calidad, aquí Johnny Giraldo, nuestro amigo, dice, tengo entendido que Andrea fue a la Feria de Cali como invitada hace mucho tiempo. ¿Cómo fue esa experiencia? ¿Cómo fue esa experiencia, Andrea?
That was fantastic. You know, I got I received some messages from Gary Dominguez for like 7 years on Messenger. And every time I got the message, he said, I want to bring you down to Cali. And every time he said that, I said, sure. And last year, and it never happened. And last year he said, I want to bring you down to Cali. And I said, sure. And he said, but this time I'm going to send you a ticket. And I said, sure. So I went down there, let's see, it was December 26th through the 29th, right before the pandemic. And I had communicated with Real Charanga. I don't remember the guy's name, but he was fabulous. He's the leader of the band. He's a violin player. And he transcribed a couple of tunes from my Andrea record. Anyway, it was like 4 days of music, and Danny Rivera was there. And I had gone down the night before I was supposed to play. And it was, it was a big place. And I thought, there's a lot of people here. This is great, And then the next night I went down there and I went to the green room and, had some food or whatever, spoke with the musicians, hanging out, everything. And then when I went up to the stage and peeked out, to see the people, it was packed.
Thousands.
And I looked to somebody who was there. I said, what are these people doing here? And they looked at me and they laughed. They said, they're here to see you. I'm like, what? I can't believe it. And I had so much fun. Oh my God. There were like 20,000 people there. I figured, what the heck? Here I am, I finally got to Cali. And for instance, I had one tune called El Guapo,
We started the show tonight with that. Yeah.
And so I said, mira, olvida el guapo, aquí está la guapa.
Ahí está la guapa. Mírenla ahí, la guapa Andrea.
I had such a good time. I was just like having fun with the audience. I wasn't intimidated. I mean, years ago, I would have been intimidated, but I guess I was just ready for it. And the musicians were great. And Gary Domingos was great. Claudia Palta, Stella Dominguez. It was a wonderful, wonderful tour. It was fabulous.
Colombia. Yo siempre digo a la gente, y la gente lo sabe, cuando alguien me dice que es de Colombia, yo digo, Colombia, yo tengo 5 novias que son de Colombia y no son mujeres. ¿Cómo es? Barranquilla, Cartagena, Medellín y Bogotá y la linda Cali, no sé qué datas, son las 5 novias que tengo en Colombia.
Ah, bueno, no sabía.
Sí, las cinco ciudades que me encantan. Yo tuve el privilegio, tuve el placer de viajar por Colombia en una gira cuando yo trabajaba con Rubén Blades y me enamoré totalmente de Colombia, especialmente en Medellín. Y yo le he dicho a mi señora divina que hay un lugar en Medellín que se llama Ato Viejo, que sirvió una comida tan exquisita que yo le digo a ella, yo quiero solamente volar de Boston a Medellín, almorzar, cenar, desayunar y nos vamos. Solamente porque la comida es tan buena en Medellín.
Bueno, si
Ato
se
Viejo.
puede hacerlo, lo haga.
Claro que sí. Aquí hay una pregunta de parte de nuestra amiga Jane que dice, what place or country has been your favorite to perform? There you go. What place or country?
Oh, my favorite to perform. I don't know. I've had so many wonderful experiences. I don't know if I have a favorite. I could just tell you my last favorite, which was Colombia.
Cali, Colombia. Now, you went to Cuba. Did you not go to Cuba?
Oh, yeah. I've been to Cuba 12 times.
And during that time, did you perform with a group that went from the United States to Cuba? Or did you, tell me about those 12 different, yesterday we had Jane Bunnett, who, practically lives in Cuba as well.
Yeah.
What was that? How was it? It came from 1 time to 12 times.
Well, what happened was I realized in my life that, the Hispanic culture was very prevalent on a lot of different levels. The music, and, I married, a Hispanic person, and I spoke Spanish and loved the culture, very warm culture. And I had decided to give back to the Latin community, the Hispanic community, by creating a workshop, the Cuban flute, Cuban flute workshop. And so I spent about a year, almost every weekend, going to the library, the public library here in the city, in New York City, just gathering research and creating a timeline and creating like this, this workshop clinic. And then I decided, well, if I'm really going to do this the right way, I need to go to Cuba and find out if all this information is correct, because this is all just book stuff, which has validity, right? But, I think, you have to get it from the real people. So I decided to go to Cuba in 2000 with an academic research visa. And the people from the Latin Jazz Yahoo group all helped me out. I had a list of all these different people and phone numbers. I went to Cuba, and people are like, you can't go alone. I'm like, why not? So I went. I spoke Spanish, and, I know how to handle myself. So I did that, and I remember when I went to the hotel, I stayed at Hostal Valencia the first time I was there. And, I was ready to go out. And the first person I went to see didn't have a phone. It was just an address. So the guy at the desk was like, you can't just go out there. I'm like, why not? He said, because you might get lost. And I said, well, wherever I am, I'll be. So I'll be okay. Don't worry about it. And he said, oh my God, she's crazy. Let me just give her my phone number. So he gave me his phone number. He said, if you get lost, call me. And I was like, I'm okay. So that was a trip that I met Rafael Quiñones, Susan Quiñones, Bobby Cacasés, Jacek Manzano, who became like my Cuban family, and then the musical relationship with Bobby Casas and I started to develop, and he asked me to come back to Cuba like every year to play in the festival. And now it's very interesting. He said that he's writing a book, and he asked me to write something. I'm like, why are you going to write? Why am I going to be in your book? He said, Andrea, mándame algo. ¿Qué te pasa? Mándalo ya. I said, okay, all right, fine, I'll do that. But I created a lot of very close relationships with those people and others. Yeah, I love Cuba.
No, Cuba. When you go to Cuba, as I was saying to everybody who was watching yesterday, and Jane and I were speaking, my experience similar to yours and everybody else. The moment we got there, it was a totally life changing experience. I've never been the same since the first time I went to Cuba in any way, shape, or manner. I mean, the impact was strong. A couple of questions I have from some folks here. One is when we had Eddie Selvigon, we did a flute summit a couple of months, 2 months ago. I had Eddie Selvigon and Jeremy Bosch, and on Saturday I had Karen Joseph and Andy Harlow. And when Eddie Selvigon spoke, he was talking about he plays the wooden flute.
Right.
The wooden flute. I rarely see people playing the wooden flute. Which flute do you prefer to play?
Well, I can't play the wooden flute, so I prefer to play the one I can play.
There you go. Into that.
I mean, I actually have a wooden flute that Richard gave me.
Richard Legways?
Yeah, so, when I do workshops, I can bring the flute so people can see it. But again, like I said before, I did a lot of research to figure out where it came from and how it was used and why, people played super high notes. It was basically because there was no microphone. And that was the only way that they could hear the flute. So they played super high. It's super strong.
Selvigon said that. He says in charangas, you play high. Everything's high in the high note. Everything's on the high note.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, when you did these or do these workshops, you've been doing these workshops. Who are the participants? Who's the audience? Who's there? Who are the people taking part?
Well, let's see. Obviously they're mostly musicians. It's very musician specific. I don't change the workshop for it to be like a music appreciation thing, although I could. But every time I've done it, it's all musicians and most often flute players. At like the National Flute Convention, whether it's the national one or flute. There's a lot of flute stuff all over. There's like worldwide. There's flute groups. And flute organizations.
And so you're there and you give your workshop. Someone asked a question about doing some work in Croatia.
Oh yeah, Richie Bonilla, Dave Valentine's manager, called me up. This was when Dave was starting to get sick. He was on his way down, and he convinced this guy to send me to go to this. It was really a week-long classical flute thing, like a workshop. But they wanted to have a component of jazz. And so I went, and I taught jazz to all these classical musicians, just trying to bridge what they knew so they could bring that into playing jazz. But it's a lifestyle. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of living. When you're improvising, things don't go right, so you change it. You do something else.
Unpack that some more. When you say it's a lifestyle, it's a way of living, it's a way of thinking. When you improvise things, because you're saying that part of being a jazz artist or playing music, not classical, but whatever, is the ability to go with it's your answer so far for a lot of things. When people say, Are you crazy? You say, wait a minute, what are you freaking out about? If I get lost, it's where I'm at, and that's where I'm supposed to be, right? So your answer is always being that you're very comfortable wherever you're going to land. That's where you're supposed to land.
Right.
And so unpack a little bit more about the lifestyle that you speak of.
Well, it's kind of like being a Girl Scout or a Boy Scout. So when you're a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout, you prepare, right? You learn different skills to be able to use them, skills and strategies and tools to be able to use. Same thing in music. You learn your scales and you learn, voice leading. You learn all the conscious stuff, right? And then you sit home for hours and hours and hours and hours, and you practice by yourself, and you learn this stuff to the point where you're breathing it, And then you go out and you play, and that's the part that's really fun, because you don't know what's going to come out, but you have an arsenal of information that you've acquired from doing the conscious work, right? So it's kind of like when you're an improviser, people think, especially classical musicians, people think, oh, you just put your flute to your mouth and you just play. And how do you do that? Well, it's similar to, you have to practice your scales. I have to practice my scales. But there's a switch that happens when you're playing, and it's a self-esteem switch. It's a self-confidence switch, and it's a switch which makes you feel comfortable to express yourself in the moment and say, well, I don't know what's really going to come out, but I think I'm going to have a good time. So I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to go with the flow, and you have to just trust. So it becomes a spiritual thing. You have to trust that you're being taken care of. You have to trust that you've done enough of the homework, right, to be able to just play. It's like this gig that I just did. It was really funny. Willie was like, oh, well, put a list together of songs you want to do. So I put a list of songs together, and, we talked about it. I think we played 2 of them, because it didn't fit at the moment that we were performing, but it's kind of like, on a spiritual level, it's kind of like being open to what's happening, accepting what's happening, and trusting that whatever is happening is okay, and not having resistance to it. Because when you have resistance, it stops the flow of energy. And when you're performing and improvising, that's not what you want to have happen. You want that energy to keep going and flowing, and I don't know. What do you think?
No, I'm fine. I'm with you. I'm loving the fact that you're sharing it, because that's part of where we're going to go through. But hold on a second. Let's hear a little bit of music again. This one is from. Let me see if I got the album right. How about if we pick something from this album here? Lotus Blossom.
Lotus Blossom. Yeah.
And how about if we do one of your compositions, Queen Girl? Queen Girl. Estamos escuchando del disco titulado Lotus Blossom.
I'm just trying to, my printer's losing its battery.
Ok.
Hold
Andrea
on.
Brachfeld, la canción Queen Girl, canción de Andrea. Con Bill O'Connell en el piano, Willard Harper, la batería, Rufus Reed en el bajo y Chembo Cornell invitado en la percusión. Now, this particular album has the title Lotus Blossom. Why?
You know, the lotus blossom is it's like on the 8th chakra. You know, people think there's only 7 chakras, but there's 22.
Mm-hmm.
So the 8th chakra is right on top of your head, and that's where the lotus blossom is. That's where I was at that point, you know. And that song actually, my great niece she was, you know, very small, like 3 or 4 years old, and she was lying on top of me, and I was pounding on, not pounding, but just, you know, kind of, you know, hitting her, you know, just ding da 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 da, and that's how that song became, you know,
Queen Girl.
created.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you spoke about the spiritual. You spoke about where Lotus Blossom sits. You have a question here, and then I'm going to go to another part. Andrea, you had a great teacher, mentor in Yusuf Latif. He gave you your inquisitive spirit. No, that's a question mark for you. A question.
Not really. I mean, he's, you know, not really. You know, my first spiritual experience was really because I performed when I was 15, and I was really, really nervous, and I found out about meditation, and I read the book, The Autobiography of Paramahansa Yogananda, and that really started me on my spiritual path. And then I started doing yoga at the Integral Yoga Institute with Swami Satchidananda. And I mean, I know that Yusuf was very spiritual, you know, but we didn't have those kind of conversations when he was teaching. You know, he wanted musicians to really stretch out,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and learn different scales and that kind of thing. But I really respected Yusuf. He was great. Yeah.
So you mentioned yoga, you mentioned meditation. There's a moment in your career where you have some physical challenges.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
It was a very stressful time for me at that point. And it was a gradual thing, but eventually what happened is I couldn't play. You know, the fingers on my left hand wouldn't stay down on the flute, and the fingers on my right hand wouldn't come up. So my whole balance was off kilter. And I did some research, and I was pretty sure I had focal dystonia, and it was true. And so I went to Stephen Frucht, who was the head of neurology at Columbia University, and he confirmed that I had focal dystonia. And what focal dystonia means is a specific movement disorder,
Mm-hmm.
and it can happen in any part of the body, but in musicians in particular, it happens in the embouchure and in your hands. And so, you know, when I went for the diagnosis, he was like, well, the only thing that works is Botox. And I was like, Botox, huh? So if you put that in my finger, will it go to the rest of my body? Because it's pretty poisonous. And he said, oh, no. And I thought,
Oh, yeah.
really? You're the head of neurology? You're going to tell me that? I said, well, no, thanks. And so it started me on a journey to go to a lot of different people. I mean, this is like this could be one show itself, you know.
I know.
But what eventually happened is I healed myself with the help of some people, and now from time to time, people will contact me, and I will do healings on other people. And I never charge for it because I know by the time they get to me, they've spent thousands and thousands of dollars with people who really don't know how to fix this. And, you know, I don't know if I can help, but I always try. Because to me, it's an energy, it's a biological energy blockage. Because whenever there's an emotional dysfunction in your body, it manifests in your life, it manifests in your body, you know, in a biological way. And so it's where your energy has a blockage, you know.
And you said that many musicians suffer of this. Obviously, you're somebody who does research, so it wasn't just anecdotal. It wasn't like you said, "Oh wow, yeah, I realized 10 music." How have musicians articulated this? How have they dealt with it in the past? And how are they conscious enough today to be aware in a positive way? I'm saying, right? Is aware, for instance, if you know if you smoke, that's going to have some consequences, not only for yourself, but for the person who's next to you, right? So how are they aware of what you just stated that is the reason for this to develop in or possibly developing in a musician?
Not.
So that awareness is not common amongst our dear friends who are musicians.
I mean, that's why I say that by the time they come to me, you know, they're at their last, you know, wits. You know, they're like, okay, I'm going to go to this crazy woman, you know, and, you know, maybe she'll help, you know. And the only thing I can, the only thing I say to people is, look, I had it and I still have it, but I know how to heal it for myself. And so I just try to help people, you know. It's very important to me anyway. I don't say for everybody, but for me to live a clean life, and to be aware of your thoughts, to be aware of the food you eat, to be aware of the words that you say and the effect that has on other people, and to be in integrity, you know, in honesty and integrity, and be kind to people. You also have to be kind to yourself, you know, because I don't know what else we have, especially these days, if we're not kind to each other, you know. But that being said, you know, if somebody comes in my environment who is, you know, slightly off or abusive or whatever, you know, I don't have a problem with, you know, moving into that space and saying, hey, you know, you need to go, you know, because, you know, you can't be a wimp, you know. So it's a delicate balance, you know, between being kind, but then also knowing how to take care of yourself. And if you're able to do that when something like that happens, if you start developing symptoms for focal dystonia, or any other disease, really, if you can become aware of what's going on in your life and then deal with it, and it's not easy, especially during these times. It's really not easy, you know, because there's so much untruth that's going on, you know, and it's very difficult to decipher what is truth. So my suggestion to people is to sit quietly and to feel it in your third chakra, which is like right below your belly button, you know. And if what somebody says feels like truth, check in with your body and see, does that feel like truth? Does it sound like truth? And I guess the hardest part about that is, you know, if you've got 99% of the people around you saying that's truth and you feel like it's not, you really have to stay in your own power. You have to stay in your own light. So, and there's a lot of people that are doing exactly what I just said. There are millions of people moving into the billions of people who are operating from that perspective during this pandemic. Because there is a transformation going on in a really beautiful way. But we have to withstand tolerating the garbage to come up.
That's I love how you put your eyes like that. No, it wasn't. It wasn't anywhere that went anywhere that I'm not with you, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are with you. Crystals can be used for dystonia. They've said that that's another way of healing using crystals. Baba Andrew says same happened with a friend of mine, so he's aware of somebody who went through that as well. And
Well, I want to say that if anybody knows anybody who's got focal dystonia and is in the throes of it, please contact me. Because, I really would like to help people. And so they know that there's light at the end of the tunnel and they will be able to play again.
You heard that right there. We're going to continue with that conversation, but there's a question here. Of the many great conga players in New York, why my boy Chembo, who I love, but I'm just curious how the blessing came about that you two work together as much as you have. There you go.
So when I brought up my daughter and I wasn't really playing a lot. And then when I decided to go back to playing, all of a sudden there was like this Latin jazz thing happening. And I remember Chembo from the 70s, because he was playing with Bobby Rodriguez and I was playing with, Charanga 76 and all those bands. We weren't like really friends, but we knew each other. But I used to go down to this place in Soho that Ray Vega was playing at, and Chembo was there. And so we kind of reconnected there. Willie Martinez was playing the Cava House. I can't believe I remembered that. Okay, Cava House. Yeah. And, and now, Chembo and I are really good friends, and, I'm friends with his wife and his wife's parents, and, we do a lot of things together. And, Chembo is just, he really knows his stuff, and he's very professional and laid back. And I like that. There's no drama. So I like to work with him.
That's a good one. So Jane Bunnett is asking how you spell what you were going through. How is that spelled?
It's focal. It's F as in Frank, OCAL, focal, which means specific. And dystonia is DYSTONIA. So the dystonia is movement. So it's a movement disorder.
Got that, Jane? I think Jane got it. I think she does. All right.
I love Jane. Hi, Jane. I love you.
Jane, you can also contact Andrea directly. As she said, she's open for people to contact her directly. So, in the vein of what we've been speaking, estamos hablando, para que ustedes que están viendo el show, le dije de antemano, miren, para mí, yo siempre he tenido la intención de cuando yo hago un programa, tanto en la radio durante 45 años, o ahora que llevamos 55 programas cada fin de semana, la intención mía no es solamente para entretener, ni tampoco es para pasar tiempo chismeando ni nada así por el estilo. Es un tiempo de calidad donde podemos entretener, educar, informar, motivar y también crear conciencia, ¿no? Por un lado, la música para mí es un elemento, es un vehículo que puede inspirar y motivar al ser humano para tomar un momento de reflexión, tanto mental como emocional, a la misma vez que puede gozar de lo que está escuchando. Y en gran parte hay varias razones por las cuales yo hago este programa. Uno es que yo quiero que la gente tenga un sentido de orgullo de las raíces nuestras, especialmente las raíces africanas. Quiero que tengan un sentido de unidad como gente, que tengan un sentido de fuerza colectiva como gente también, ¿no? Si todos estamos unidos, tenemos una fuerza colectiva.
Mhm.
Y a la vez, yo siempre pienso de que nosotros, los seres humanos, somos parte de un ecosistema. Y ese ecosistema no es solamente el ecosistema el ambiente, ¿no? Porque la gente cuando oyen ecosistema automáticamente piensan el ambiente, el ambiente, el ecosistema del ambiente. No. Hay ciertos ecosistemas que incluye el ambiente, que incluye nosotros los seres humanos, que incluye instituciones y cosas así por el estilo. Y nosotros tenemos un papel, un deber. You know, we're the stewards of these ecosystems, right? We're the steward of the environment. We're the stewards of how we survive as human beings. We're the stewards as to what's going to happen with institutions moving forward.
Right.
And so, las conversaciones no solamente son conversaciones que tienen que ver con la música, ni tienen que ver con quién tocaste o con quién empezaste o qué estaba pensando cuando hiciste esa composición, etcétera, etcétera. Es importante para mí aprovechar estos momentos para crear diálogo, pero también conciencia sobre lo que es más allá del tema de la música. Las próximas selecciones que vamos a escuchar en el trasfondo, because we're not going to hear all of them, they all come from your previous album, whose title I love, If Not Now, When?
If not one of my favorite records.
If Not Now, When? Creating Space, Deeply I Live, Moving Forward. Creating Space, Deeply I Live, Moving Forward. I mean, those are just 3 of the titles of that album, If Not Now, When? Okay. So I want to segue into that, but there's some questions that are out here again. So Jane says she got the spelling, and she says she loves you too. And then Ceci and Johnny out in California, aligning Sacrotraca. Okay, the alignment. And then David, how different is focal dystonia to Bell's palsy? Question for you.
I'm not a doctor. I don't know. That's all I can say about that because I don't really know. Sorry.
So let's go to this, If Not Now, When? And we'll hear this for a little bit. La selección se titula Creating Space, Creando Espacio. So this is one of your favorite albums. And obviously, as I said before, the titles to me say it all, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the album.
Well, in 2016, I started going through what is described as the dark night of the soul. And what that is a transformation period that could happen one time in your life, twice, 3, 15 times in your life. And it's really where you're going through the dissolution of the ego.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided that I could no longer play music from the space of the ego, that I had to get rid of my ego, and ego, whether it's positive or negative, is still ego. It's from the mind, it's not from the heart. So that was a very difficult year for me. And then in January of 2017, I seemed to kind of move out of that space, and I kind of got over the hump, like the spiritual hump. And I started writing music, and I wrote Deeply I Live. I wrote, I wrote 4 tunes and then submitted them for a grant for Chamber Music America. And I had just recently found out about Chamber Music America. So luckily, I didn't know the amount of competition there was for getting the grant. And, I didn't know how hard it was to get a grant. I just knew that it existed. I wrote the music and I submitted it. It was, so my naivete really worked well for me because I didn't write the music to get the grant. I wrote the music because I had finally gotten out of, the dark night of the soul, that period anyway. And it was really about learning how to live from the heart and not from the mind, not from the ego. Thus, the names of all those songs, and creating space was really about releasing all the negativity, releasing the issues, and it's not as easy as, that. I had gone through years of therapy to understand all the stuff, my mishigash, that's what we call in Yiddish. Mishigash is your craziness. And I released all this to create space for just divine love to come in. Mm-hmm. And so that was what creating space was about. And deeply I live very deeply. And, it's interesting. The guys who play on this record, little by little, they won't say it in the same terms that I say it, but they all feel the same thing. They're like, it feels so good to play this music. I'm like, cool. I'm glad you like it, And my drummer's like, I love creating space, and I haven't really told him the backstory of that, but it's good enough that he, I love the way he plays. So it's good enough that he just loves to play it, and it's got that vibe, I remember I had a sub for a drummer one time, and in the beginning of the gig, he didn't feel well, and then we played this set, and he went, and it was this music, and he said, I feel really good. I don't know why I feel really good, but I think it's got something to do with the music. And I'm like, maybe, could be.
It could be. It could be. So it's one of your favorite albums. It's become one of my favorite albums because it touches on the things that you just mentioned, but it's also so open. And that is one of the reasons I think I was attracted to the album, right? By being open is like, you're so like an open book. You're so like saying, look, boom, which is what we just spoke about. It's not the ego of the head. It's the heart, right? So it comes from the heart. So when you hear this album, when you read the liner notes and everything, it's coming from that place. It's coming from the heart. This, what we call music and everything that's associated with, right? Which is the record industry, the promotional industry, the media that surrounds this music, where it gets played, who plays it, et cetera, where the clubs or non-clubs or concerts, et cetera. What's the reception on the part of that other part of the ecosystem that has to do with music? And then B, does that matter?
Okay, so I would say that every time that we've played this music, people really enjoy it. They really love it. I don't know if they understand it. And is it important? Absolutely, because, once you start living from your heart, everything is different in your life. Your intention for living is different. Mm-hmm. It's like name, fame, money. No, just live from your heart. and everything else will fall into place. And then when it falls into place, it's like, who cares? Because when you're living from your heart, there's nothing better. I'll tell you a story. We were doing a gig at Queen's Library, and there was no sound system. It was in the basement, and we start setting up, and it was part of the grant, and my guys are great. They're just like, you got a gig? Great, and I don't think there was anybody like younger than 70 in the audience, 70 on up. And we were playing this music, and I thought, oh my goodness, should I play this or should I play like, the A Train, And the guys in my band were like, play this. It's okay. So I said to the audience, so we're going to play this music that's original, and you've never heard it before. And, to me, is if you hear the same music, if you have the same conversation, you never grow. So, our intention is to not necessarily help you grow, but just to offer you something different, And we played a couple tunes, and people were like, play more, play more. We love it. Just do it. Don't worry. We're good. I was like, okay. So it's very important, I mean, I would never, I don't impose my way of thought on anybody. If I'm in a conversation with somebody and I start hearing the vocabulary that I use with spirituality, then I say, oh, maybe they'd like to have a conversation about this, but I never proselytize. I don't think that's, it's not comfortable for me, so it's very important. And as a matter of fact, I recorded Brazilian Whispers, the last record, because I wanted to reach more people. I don't know if I did or not, but the guys in my band, we just did a gig where we played If Not Now When music, and they all said, let's do another record like this. And when you have guys or women, just I say guys, or it could be women too, who are on the same page with you musically, and they're just such fabulous musicians, and they have the desire to create the same kind of music that you feel in your heart. It's just, there's nothing better, on a musical level, there's really nothing better. It's just, I love it, and these guys are just so talented, and they're so into the music, I love it.
Got a great group, and the album is fantastic. There are a couple of questions and comments. Here's Ceci and Johnny, California. My fantasy jazz band collaboration will be Andrea Ali Ryerson and Susie Hansen. Okay, Susie Hansen. That's an interesting one. Victor Rivera, who's signing off. Mil gracias, don José, for another informative afternoon. Por favor, dale mi gracias a la maestra Andrea Brachfeld por su talento y también su inspiración. There you go. I like that one. Carlos Bislett. Carlos dice, Jose, this is one very interesting interview. Love it. This is what music is all about. No ego. All right, Carlos. Good to hear that. Por aquí, Salsa Caliche dice, excelente programa, José. Vamos a otro domingo de mucha cultura musical. Gracias, Salsa Caliche, por esos comentarios. And you offered yourself when we were talking about, how to deal with something that many musicians must to deal with. That must be traumatic for many, right? To say, "Oh wow, I can't play." Can you imagine? I'll give you an anecdote. So, 2014, I was diagnosed with nasopharyngeal cancer. Nasopharyngeal cancer is a cancer you get along the nasal area, and the treatment. Luckily, they got mine early compared to others. But the treatment was 33 days. Every day of radiation treatment. Wow. Every other week I had chemo. My wife was concerned because it was in this area that I would lose my voice, right? So when we had our pre-meetings with the doctor, she said, she told him what I did. And she said, whatever, please protect his vocal cords and his voice and all that kind of stuff. So they did all the pre-testing so there would be a standard that they could go from a baseline to make sure on the other side I was okay. But it was interesting because after I came out of it, right, it took a while, not for my voice to get back to where I was, but just my whole body to get back to being strong. That was 6 years ago. And we would have, after about a month, we would have these like support groups that would get together. People who had gone through the same kind of treatment and whatnot. And there was a woman who was a chef. And as we're doing a support group, she says, isn't this something, life's irony? All my life, my passion has been to be a chef. Now I go through this and I have no taste. I don't have any taste buds. I can't taste anything. So I can't do what I love to do, cook. Because part of the downside was you lose your taste buds, right? So for me, it's been a long time before I can get the exact taste buds that I had before. That being said, she then said, I'm going to have to reinvent myself and do something different if I'm not going to be able to do this for the short term or the medium term or the long term, right? And I remember that specifically because this is a woman who was basically saying to me, the thing that I've loved the most to do, I can no longer do.
Right.
So I think about a musician who has that passion to play flute, play trumpet, play drums, play piano, sing, do whatever it is, going through what you went through, the trauma that must be for those, right? And so I'm thinking, how do we bring this kind of information into the ecosystem of thought amongst musicians, particularly, so that they know that there's a recourse that speaks to how you live your life, and how you do the things you need to do to make sure that you are in tune, right?
Right.
So that's a question. I don't have the answer to that. I don't know if you've thought of that or if for you it's more like what you do is enough. In other words, you advertise it. I mean, you're very open about what you do and how you try to help people. But any thoughts that you can share that would help people like me make sure that this becomes part of the thinking, similar to us messaging people, okay, COVID-19, wear a mask, wash your hands, 6 feet distance. How do I start messaging? How do we, those of us collectively, message this as far as how you live is going to be as important as that exercise you're doing every day, whatever your instrument is?
Well, Jose, I'm glad you mentioned that because to me, life is about learning and it's about growing and it's about the lessons. And whatever happens to you or happened to you, to me is a lesson. And it's all positive. And it's all informative and helpful. But it's very difficult to move into the space where you understand that, especially if you've had many, many difficult situations. But to me, it's ultimately about trust and having faith in, you could say God, you could say higher spirit, you could say the divine, you could say, an ultra other realm, So I hope I'm staying on topic, but basically we have to just trust that whatever happens, it's for us to learn. I was trying to get a read when you said, that you had problems with your nose and your throat, but it sounds like, especially the vocabulary that you've been saying in this interview, it sounds like your awareness has opened up. And whatever it is that you went through with the cancer, you learned the lesson.
Oh, for sure.
So, in response to this, well, first of all, the chef, perhaps for her, she needed to detach herself from the material and move into the divine to be able to understand why that happened. With musicians and with what happened to me with focal dystonia, the lesson for me was self-care and self-love and self-esteem. And I needed to move into that space. It was just like, it just bombarded me. You have to take care of your heart. You have to take care of yourself. And I think the hardest part to learn about that, when musicians have problems like that, is to take care of yourself regardless of anything, of any relationship, of any person that you're attached to, any belief system that you're attached to, any way of life that you're attached to. If you want to expand and you want to grow, you have to trust that the lessons that are coming are meant for you and are meant for your good. They're meant for your evolution. But I don't think the majority of people really can understand that. I mean, I grew up with two very narcissistic, self-centered people, and I had a pity party for most of my life about it until I learned the lesson. And now, what happens is I can help other people. So when somebody says my mother is a narcissist, I'm like, okay, I understand that. So try to understand, what the lesson that you're supposed to learn. And it's a very difficult thing, especially if it's been very violent, like sexual abuse,
Sure.
and physical abuse, emotional abuse. Abuse is very difficult, but if you can really trust the lessons and open yourself up to, show me the lessons, then the amount of healing that happens is just phenomenal. It's really quite amazing. It's very complicated. This can go on and on and on.
Well, it's complicated, and at the same time, it's very simple, and we'll get to that in a second. So we got a few minutes left. Jane Bunny says, great conversation. Thank you, Jane. You're both inspirations. Jane, I told you, you're my inspiration as well. Our good friend David, you're so right in regard to positivity, trust, learning, growing. I say that as a cancer survivor. Yes, it is true. So, so you meditate.
I do.
I meditate.
I can tell.
And I meditate in prayer. So, and I have, my meditations. But so this morning, which is usually my morning, right? First, I should tell you that the beautiful wife I have upstairs, Divina, wakes me up every morning with a kiss.
Aw.
And
I want that too. Anybody out there, call me.
And I don't drink coffee anymore.
Right.
But she gives me a kiss con sabor a café.
Yes.
She'll come downstairs to the kitchen. She'll prepare my tea, and then she'll prepare her coffee. And she'll come upstairs. She'll bring my tea, and she'll bring her coffee up, and she'll wake me up. She says, "Despierta," and she'll give me a kiss. And that's the first thing of my day, right? This beautiful kiss from this beautiful woman, con sabor a café. I'm like, wow, what a way to start off my day. I just got a kiss with this beautiful taste of coffee. Oh my God. I'm blessed. But then, I go through my meditations and I'll, in my meditations and my prayers, I'll say, please, whatever I say today, whatever I do today, whatever I think today, whatever I feel today, let it all be in sync. I just want all that to be in sync. And then I'll ask, can I have at least some moment throughout the day where I connect with other people who have a thought and a desire to leave this world better than what it was when we came, and that they really want to make it so that people are healthy, especially our children.
Right.
And in that meditation and prayer, I say, not that they just be physically healthy, but that they be mentally healthy, emotionally healthy,
Right.
culturally healthy, socially healthy, financially healthy, spiritually healthy. Just be holistic.
Right.
And then at some moment when I get to the end, I say, whatever happiness I receive today, let it not be as a consequence of somebody else's misery, right? I want to be happy, but I don't want it because somebody else had to suffer for me to be happy.
Right.
And then I do my breathing, and I breathe in peace and I breathe out love.
Right.
And this morning, knowing that I was going to have you as my guest, I already knew we were going to get to the subject matter because I'd given you a hint yesterday. But I know that when my doctor said to me that I had cancer, and I've had cancer twice already.
Wow.
When the doctor closed the door and he said to me, Jose, we did the biopsy, et cetera, and you've got cancer. I said, okay. And he said, but don't worry, I'm going to cure you. This is what we're going to do, et cetera, et cetera. He said,
Yeah.
do you have any questions? And I said, two questions. One, first is not a question, but I just want you to know, don't get embarrassed. I'm going to give you a hug and a kiss. And he looked at me like, what? And I said, so don't be embarrassed. So I gave him a hug and I gave him a kiss on both cheeks. And then I said, and then my question is, does this mean that you and I are going to be BBFF? And he said, what do you mean BBFF? Best friends forever. And he started laughing. And I said, no, because you said you're going to take care of me. So I'm trusting that you're going to take care of me. That means we're going to be good friends. He said, yes, I'm going to take care of you. After he finished the whole thing, he said to me, Jose, I've been doing this for years. And very few men in particular respond the way you have responded when I've informed them that they have cancer. And I said, well, doctor, to be honest with you, the letter that I heard loud and clear was cure. You may have said cancer, but the one that was loud in my ears was cure.
Right.
You could have said a whole bunch of other things, right? But what you said was, I'm going to cure you. So that's the one that really impacted me. And so then we saw each other, my wife and I, soon after. And we're in the elevator. We're going to, oncology. And she then realized something had happened and it was not good news. And she says to me, Jose, I don't want to lose you. I said, you're not going to lose me. The doctor told me he's going to cure me. It's a great team of doctors. And the other thing is I've got you. Plus, I've got insurance. I've got a great job. Thank you very much. We're in Boston. We're not in Shreveport, Louisiana after a hurricane or Wichita, Kansas after a tornado. We're in Boston with all these great hospitals. We've got a great family. We've got the infrastructure. I'm healthy. Other than that, I'm very healthy. I've got so many blessings. We're going to get through this. And it took her a while to realize all these things. And she says, you're right. And I said, and most important, have I told you? I've got you. And it turns out, she is my divine angel. She is the best doctor I've ever had. But I share that because the same way David spoke about positivity, I've always known that part of any challenge is how positive your mind is at the moment when that challenge comes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you live a positive life, meaning that all these things are in sync, who you are, what you say, what you feel, what you think, what you do, your actions, all that are in sync to be positive, then the outcome is going to be positive at the other side, regardless of what that challenge is right now, right? This is the challenge, but on the other side of that challenge is going to be a positive result or positive ending or something of that nature. And so I wanted to share that with you as we conclude this, because I want the audience out there to take away a certain message. And I'm going to ask you to leave us with what would be the message you want all of us to leave with after this conversation.
Well, to me, it's simple. Since 2017, January of 2017, when I was blessed to go through the dark night of the soul and depressed every day in 2016, I was able to combine my music and my spiritual life. And I wasn't sure after I went through the dark night of the soul if I was going to keep playing music. But what happened was the two came together. And now my purpose in life, I know, is very clear. Mm-hmm. It's to play music for healing. But I couldn't do that before I healed myself. Because it's like you can't love somebody unless you know what love is.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't heal somebody unless you felt that yourself. So my final message is, I hope that with my music, I can make people feel better about themselves after they've heard the music. And be able to not think it, but feel it. Because that's really, to me, that's what we're on the planet for, to help, to serve people. So my service to the people of this particular planet that I'm living on at the moment is through my music and through my words and my actions. And what you were talking about, when you say in sync, to me, it's in integrity, which is very important. It's like, even something little, you say, I'll call you in a minute. And then you don't call. You're out of integrity, So that's the final message is that I just hope that with my music, I can, make people feel better and move forward in their lives. That's it.
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, this is the folks saying thank you. Thank you. Eric in Panama, thanks for sharing una conversación sincera. Saludos desde Panama. David Romero, my faith in my heavenly family got me through successful life-saving heart transplant.
Wow.
Jane Bunnett, you bet. Ceci says, I always pray to have eyes to see the best, a heart that forgives the worst, a mind that forgets the bad, and a soul that never loses faith. Thanks for the gift of your music, Andrea.
Thank you.
And Kid Holiday says, great messages, thank you, with much love. And so I think David says here, thank you for a moving, inspirational couple hours. Thank you, David. And so part of my goal has always been that the music and the conversation that we share brings peace, love, and happiness to people's hearts and joy and harmony to their lives. So I hope that we were able to accomplish that this day.
Good.
I want to thank you, as I did thanking Jane yesterday, because that music and your purpose in life is what makes it possible for us to see light where there is darkness. And we both agree there's a lot of darkness at this moment. But if it weren't for music, and if it weren't for the arts, if it weren't for those who perform the arts, regardless if they're poets, writers, dancers, singers, actors, whatever, sculptors, whatever art that they basically execute, I don't think many of us would be able to breathe the way we breathe every single morning, because it's through those arts that we're able to at least, again, capture what is the beauty of life. And so you're an example of that. And I want to thank you, give you a lot of love, a lot of blessings, muchas bendiciones, mucha paz, mucho aché para ti también y tu familia. Qué alegría que esté con nosotros por lo menos 2 horas y 34 minutos de conversación. Bueno, 2 horas y 35 minutos de programación, 2 horas de conversación. Así
que... And the last word I want to say is love, because that's the only thing that's important on the planet.
That sure is. And thanks, Andrea. Words of wisdom, hearts of love. Yes. Well, my friend, se te quiere.
Gracias.
Te quiero mucho. Cuídate y gracias. Estaremos en contacto. And in the background, for those of you who haven't got this, listen to this. The new one, Brazilian Whispers. Cuídate.
Okay, gracias.
Chao, nada de que, gracias a ti. Bye bye. Bueno, mi gente, ahí escucharon una conversación y música de nuestra invitada Andrea Brachfeld para el día de hoy, día 18 de octubre. Espero que haya sido de su agrado. De nuevo, si la música de la conversación le trajo a ustedes alegría, paz y amor a sus vidas, y armonía y felicidad a sus corazones, pues entonces cumplimos. Espero verlos el próximo sábado, si Dios permite, cuando tendremos otro programa más con música y conversación aquí en la onda de Con Salsa en vivo en Facebook y YouTube de 4 a 6. Les recuerdo, por favor, mascarillas si salen, 6 pies de distancia, lávense las manos. Y Latino, defiende lo tuyo con orgullo, todos unidos entre amigos, uno para todos y todos para uno. So with that, we conclude the program for this afternoon. I want to thank each and every one of you for being part of the Con Salsa family on this day. I hope that it brought exactly what I said, peace, love, and happiness to your hearts and joy and harmony to your lives. And if we did that, then mission accomplished. And thank you again for sharing this time with us, creating this community. We do it every Saturday from 4 to 6, and on Sunday as well from 4 to 6. Sometimes it goes over, like today. I'll let you know who our guests will be tomorrow. I'll start announcing it so you know who we'll be having next weekend. Okay? Bueno, felicidades. Cuídense. Al son de música brasilera.
madre se